So by the end of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry has, in a sense, in a lot of ways, moved beyond his grief, and throughout the rest of the series, doesn't deal too much with the fact that he's an orphan, although his loneliness comes up quite a bit. But the point is that the next film, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, has a completely different tone and feel and visual scheme. And part of that is that it was directed not by Mr. Cuarón, but by Mike Newell, who, in my personal opinion, made what is, bar none, the greatest Harry Potter film of all time. To me, what makes a great movie is not its themes or the complexity of its ideas. To me, like, as important as ideas are, what ultimately is going to make a film interesting is if it has scenes that just amaze you with both the way they look and what happens in them. And that is something that Mr. Newell manages to create with Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So after after a frightening nightmare sequence that hints at dark things to come, we get a really, truly amazing series of events in which Harry goes to the Quidditch World Cup, which is basically the Super Bowl of the magic world, except it's not football, it's Quidditch, which involves broomsticks and a lot of other complicated rules I really don't want to get into here. But the movie, in showing the Quidditch World Cup, creates this just tremendous, incredible spectacle. For example, as the game begins, the camera slowly pans up this long green hill that's covered with tents, and there's just a touch of gold light, giving it kind of an otherworldly, painterly look. And then as the camera crosses over the tents, it ends up looking down into the silvery stadium where everybody's gathered and there are balloons of all colors raining down. And the result is just something absolutely exciting and beautiful. And what compounds this fact is that that Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, in a lot of ways, is about spectator events, about any sort of sequence in which a ton of people gather together to watch some kind of game. And this becomes an increasingly crucial theme as when Harry is drafted into this magical series of contests called the Triwizard Tournament, in which he has to face dragons and fight demonic creatures underwater and all kinds of horrible stuff that nearly ends his life in some cases. But the movie beautifully captures the thrill of spectator events. The camera often is the cinematography was by the brilliant Roger Pratt, by the way, who also did Chocolat. But the camera often is circles whatever sporting arena the movie is focused on for the time being, and it's always pumped up by Patrick Doyle's score, which is triumphant and menacing and brassy, and just overall gives you a sense of genuine, absolute grandeur. But it's important to know that not unlike The Fountain, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is not just about creating amazing, astounding, wondrous images. There's a dark side to it, and part of that comes from the fact that Harry, now 14, is hitting puberty, and which leads to some really really hilarious encounters, like one where he's looking over at the girl he has a crush on, and he opens his mouth and a ton of pumpkin juice comes spraying out, which is really quite a terrific visual gag. But the movie manages to explore his romantic pining in a serious way as well, and through that we get the Yule Ball, which is the school dance, where Harry is just miserable and ends up being one of the only people sitting on the sidelines watching everyone else have a good time. And for me, the Yule Ball is a pretty good, does a pretty fantastic job of evoking what school dances are actually like. I can remember some, not entirely, but really quite miserable affairs. And some good ones too, but never mind that. But there's beyond this, there's something else going on as well behind all the magical games and beginnings of romances. There's also a sinister conspiracy going on in the shadow of the movie. One that involves the Voldemort, who's essentially the Hitler of the magical world. In this film, he's attempting to return to power and come and regroup with his followers in another bid to take over the world and impose brutal and torturous order over everything. And so that makes Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire a really unusual and entertaining, but also painful film, because we get this terrific series of spectacles, of magical contests, both through the Triwizard Tournament that Harry's a part of and the Quidditch World Cup. But then at the end, Voldemort comes back and wreaks murder and havoc, and all of a sudden everything is cast in the shadow of pain and death, especially because of this truly hair-raising and magnificent sequence where Harry is caught up in a duel with Voldemort in this really evocative, grimy graveyard where horrible concrete graves spring up from dark green grass. And so in the end, when he survives and returns to Hogwarts, which I don't think is much of a spoiler alert considering that there are 7 books and 8 films, when he returns, all the joyous spectacle of before is cast in the shadow of this death and all this pain and the horror of Voldemort's return. And so not unlike Ender's Game, there's a come down at the end, a realization that even when life seems like a game, there are more horrific and more serious things going on beneath the surface, which is perfectly illustrated in a scene during the tournament where Harry and one of his rivals in the tournament, Cedric, Harry almost lets Cedric die so he can win the tournament, and then at the last minute chooses to rescue him instead. And then there's this wonderful moment where Cedric turns to him and says, "Some game." And there's the cold, hard realization of what this sporting event really is, that it's really a bloodbath waiting to happen with all these violent desires rippling underneath the spectacle. All that comes forth and you understand. And yet there's also a bit of hope at the end as well, because one of the interesting things about Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is that all the happiness and friendship that's a part of the movie, once it's cast in the shadow of Voldemort's return and all the death and destruction that occurs when that happens, once all the happiness is cast in the shadow of that, it means a lot more. And so at the end we get this takeaway of Harry realizing that everything's going to change, but that doesn't destroy the fact that he's surrounded by wonderful people and great friends, even if there's anguish to be felt and tragedy to be endured.